Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. We've got class tuning incoming, as well as some PvP gearing correction changes that you're definitely going to want to know about that are coming in on Tuesday. We got quite a few changes to cover, so I'm just going to immediately dive into them here. First one right off the rip is Death Knights. The Riders of Apocalypse Trollbane's Ice Fury slows are only going to slow targets by 40%, down from 70. Now, this being a PvE change makes me think that the super powerful snare was causing, the inability to group mobs together in clusters to be frustrating. I think any proc snare that's super effective can really make it difficult to clump up mobs together. But it does have implications to some passive snare applications in PvP, but it will probably be very minor. Feral Druids are seeing a change to their rampant ferocity, so that now the AoE is going to be coming out of the Druid as opposed to the target. Is going to give you more control over where it's hitting, but again, it's probably going to have a lot more bigger implications in PvE than PvP specifically. Resto Druids are seeing a 4% healing buff, and PvE Druids seem to think that that's not really going to be enough, and don't worry, PvP Druids, you're not even getting that. So Resto Druid maybe not going to be in the best of spots after this change. For Beast Mastery Hunters, you're getting a little bit of an AoE buff. Beast Cleave and Kill Cleave damage are going from 80% to 90%. Now, you're pretty much never really using Beast Cleave in PvP, although maybe it might be worth trying it. It can be very difficult to actually get enemies stacked up enough that it would really matter. But maybe it could be fun in a BG and you got multiple melee DPS or something like that to try and just AoE them with Kill Cleave and Beast Cleave damage. But again, in PvP, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. I think the PvP specific changes are going to make a bigger impact. Although maybe these ones will. Fire Mage, you're getting 15% Flame Strike damage, 20% Phoenix Flames damage, and 10% Living Bomb. The Lit Fuse build, I think, is still off the table. So the buffs to the AoE here, I think Phoenix Flames will be noticeable in PvP, but Flame Strike, Living Bomb, probably not. For Frost Mage, you're getting a buff in PvE. Glacial Spike is getting a 20% damage increase. Ray of Frost is getting a 15% damage increase, but not in PvP. Not surprising to see. And I'm really curious to see which specs dodged nerfs in the PvP changes. For Shadow, you're just getting a 4% damage increase. It's not bad, and they're letting that slide through in PvP. I think that's fine. For player versus player, Unholy Death Knights, you're a target of a nerf here, it looks like, causes Death Quill to burst 2 Festering Wounds down from 3. So your single target burst is going to go down, I think, quite a bit from that. So a little bit less spiky damage. And to be fair, I think Unholy is supposed to be like more sustained oriented, and Frost is supposed to take the role of spiky damage. So I think this is a fair change thematically between what are the identities for the specs in PvP. Havoc Demon Hunters are finally getting some attention here. Demon's Bite, Demon's Blades, and Chaos Strike / Annihilation or Blade Dance / Death Sweep are all getting 10% damage increases. Now, I think it's still likely to be a very similar bursty meta with rogues and hunters like that, which is probably going to make it difficult for you as a demon hunter regardless of this, but it's definitely better than nothing. For Feral Druid, it looks like you're going to be copying a little bit of a rearrangement on your damage. Sabretooth is now only increasing Ferocious Bite damage by 10%, down from 15, and it increases the damage of Ferocious Bite per periodic effect only by 2%, down from 3. So the big Ferocious Bites are getting nerfed. Taste for Blood now increases Ferocious Bite by 6%, down from 12. It's a lot of nerfs to Ferocious Bite. In exchange, your Rip damage is going from 15% damage increase to 25% damage increase, and your Rake initial hit is going from 15% to 25%. And its periodic effect is going from a -6 to 10. So I assume that that's a 16% overall. Again, it's not additive because they're percentages, but you get what I mean. It's a little bit more than 10%. So more bleed damage, less bite damage. Could fit really nicely with how Warlocks are performing and Shadow Priest even. So a little bit more focused around their bleeds. Devastation, Eternity Surge is getting nerfed by 15% in PvP. I think just last week something like that got buffed or something. I don't remember if I had a PvP reversion on it or not, but Devastation is definitely like overperforming. A bit surprised to not see them target anything oriented towards their utility, like their snares, just targeting strictly their damage, when I think there are other elements of Devastation at the moment that are a bit more oppressive. Although their damage is definitely over the top as well. So I think this is fair. For Frost Mages, and not even just Frost, for anyone that's running Frost Fire, your overall Frost Fire bolts are going to do more damage, but the stacking mechanic that makes it hit for like a one tap is getting nerfed. So I think they're trying to take damage out of Ice Lance and put damage into casted spells is what they're trying to do with Frost Mage to make it a bit more healthy. For Arcane, you're just getting buffed out the wazoo. Arcane Blast is going from 15% damage increase to 45%. Arcane Missiles is getting a 20% increase. Barrage is getting a 15% increase. And Magi Spark, though, is now 50% effective in PvP. And when I looked up this ability, it looks like your Touch of the Magi now also conjures a spark, causing the damage from your next Arcane Barrage, Blast, and Arcane Missiles to echo for 100% of their damage. Upon receiving damage from all three of these spells, the spark will explode. So Touch of the Magi is going to be a little bit less effective, quite a bit though, 50%, but all of your damage outside of that window is going up. And this is something that they were trying to do for a long time with a lot of classes, is taking damage out of cooldowns and putting them more into their overall kit. So if they can hit that mark like they did with Destruction and Dragonflight, Arcane could be really fun. So, but initially when I'm looking at this, is like, is that enough to outweigh the burst nerf? And I don't think we're going to know until it actually goes live. Fire Mages, this is something that can make you more viable. Fireball is going to do 100% more damage, up from 35%. And then this one, maybe not so much, but potentially worth giving it a go. Greater Pyroblast cast time is being reduced to 4 seconds from 4.5, but it's only going to do 30% of someone's health down from 35, which I think is fair because their health pools are so high. So Greater Pyro is a little faster. Fireball's doing a lot. So we're going to just be Fireball, Chuckers, no more AoE Living Bomb, just big single target, I think. Coming out from Fire Mage with this change. For Frost, this is again falling in line. Ice Lance is getting a nerf from 45% damage increase to 25%. That is significant. Ice Lance is going to be doing a lot less. But Frostbolt is going from 118 to 150, and I think that will likely scale with Frostfire Bolt itself. So your Frostfire Bolts could be really good. It's definitely likely keep an eye on some of the talents that focus around Frostbolt builds. Ray of Frost also getting a 5% damage increase, but your Ice Barrier is getting nerfed. Your Absorb amount is now decreased by 40%, up from 25, so a 15% increase from that. So you're going to be a lot less tanky. And I think what they're thinking with Mage is that you can kite so well that you need to be squishy, because otherwise you just never die and you're not really a good target. It could be a bit overkill with now that they're going to be more stationary casting spells on top of this. So kind of a wait and see. Now with healers, to me, it seems like they want to buff every healer up to the level of Preservation Evoker, because Preservation Evoker is not getting nerfed. So, but Mistweavers, their main heals, Enveloping Mist and Vivify, are getting 20% increases. So your throughput is going to be gnarly. Now it comes down to mechanics, right? In Arena, I think their mechanics aren't great. They don't have a lot of crowd control avoidance. They have 0 damage at this point in time. In 11.0.5, they are getting reworked to get some damage, which could help them in the future, but we're just talking about the immediate presence. This is going to make them incredibly oppressive in Battleground Blitz, though. You are going from the best healer to the Omega God best healer ever in Battleground Blitz, so I'm a bit worried about that. But maybe they're just trying to incentivize people to play healers because they're so darn strong. But I feel like in Shuffle, you're still not going to probably feel that great. But in 3v3 Arena with a team, potentially. Again, it just comes down to kit. But sometimes if your mana regeneration is good, you got high throughput and you can just kind of dampen in the back, then you end up being actually very viable. Holy Paladins as well, getting significant buffs. Your mana regeneration is now only reduced by 20% PvP, down from 35. So 15% more mana regeneration, which is a major pain point. You're also getting 15% more healing on Holy Shock and Word of Glory, and 20% more on Holy Light. So all main throughput buffs and mana regenerations could definitely bring these healers a lot closer to where Preservation Evoker currently is. For Discipline Priest, you are receiving a nerf though. Wheel and Woe's bonus to Powered Shield is now 50% effective, and Wheel and Woe is your Penance Bolts increase the damage of your next smite by 20%, and the Absorb of your Powered Shield by 10, stacking up to 8 times. So it can go up to 80% for your shield. That's now only going to be 40%. And Powered Shields have obviously been really good for Discipline. So this is going to feel, I think, pretty heavy as far as nerfs are concerned for Discipline Priest specifically. Holy, you're also getting a 40% increase on Serenity and Sanctify, your big main spending heals. So a lot of healers getting really big buffs with this one. For Shadow, Perfected Form now increases the damage dealt by Void Form by 10%, down from 20. So Shadow getting a little bit of a nerf on their burst damage. And when I looked this up, Perfected Form was that your damage dealt is increased by 12% during Dark Ascension and 20% during Void Form. So now it's going to be 10%. But I think Dark Ascension remains untouched. So I don't know if they're trying to encourage you to go towards a Dark Ascension build with this change, given that it's not noted. But it may be worth checking out if you're a Shadow Priest. For Subtlety, Reverberation is now increasing echoing reprimands damage only by 50%, down from 70%. And obviously subtlety rogue, control, survivability, and damage is really high. I was surprised that this is like the only nerf that rogue is really seen, because I think rogue is still very dominant. It is possible if Holy Paladin gets up a bit higher, maybe Holy Paladin can be like the counter to the hunter and the rogues that is going on. This is something you've got to consider, right? Like rogue's not getting nerfed, but the specs that traditionally counter it are getting buffed, which could have a shift in the meta overall. So it's an interesting approach to the changes here, as opposed to nerfing Preservation Evoker, buffing every other healer to that level. I'm a bit worried about what it will happen in BG Blitz, a little bit less about in Shuffle, because Shuffle is dampening to nerf the healing anyways. But in BG Blitz, with how high healing already was, although Paladins were pretty weak, but that Mistweaver increase, the Holy Priest seems maybe like it'll be all right in BG Blitz. But overall, I think it's good. I think this is going to incentivize people to be playing those specs for sure, but we got to just keep an eye on the balance overall. The next major update that you're going to want to know about is the PvP weapons update. So basically, if you picked up the quest and messed up your quest at the start of the expansion, like I did on a character where you earned some conquest before you had the quest, you don't have to worry about that. Now it's just, I think there's going to be a new quest or a new achievement that's going to pop up. And once you've earned 2,500 in the season, you'll be able to complete it. You'll get token and you can go to the vendor and you can pick whatever weapon you want. So this is a massive quality of life improvement from that quest, which I think is really good as far as their responsiveness to the community, because those are two main criticisms. Like, I can't pick the weapon with the right stats. That feels really bad. And there's crafted weapons as well. But now this feels like it's going to be at least a decent pickup. They also, took into account that Fury Warrior weapons are super expensive. So you'll be able to get two-handers if you wanted to do this, which is likely a really big early power spike, and you can craft the weapons later to replace them if you wanted to. So this is good that they're taking that all into account, realizing that this had a lot of shortcomings, a lot of flaws to it, and there's a lot of pain from players who may have not noticed that it existed at all. So I think this is a really good adaptation of that mid-season, and thought that was definitely worth giving credit to and worth letting you guys know about, so that you don't end up, wasting some resources on a weapon otherwise. So thank you guys very much for tuning into this video. If you want to make sure you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft and the gaming industry, then make sure to smash the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one.